All right, students, welcome back. Now we're going to be looking at photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and we're going to go ahead and look at these basically at the same time because of the way they work together. Okay. Now, looking at first off our two chemical equations here at the top, you're going to notice that for photosynthesis and cellular respiration, a lot of the molecules involved, a lot of these compounds involved are similar. In fact, one thing that I do want you to notice, I put down here at the bottom, is how the chemical equations are essentially the same, just reversed. And so we look at the components that make up these processes. We're starting here in photosynthesis with our 6CO2. This is our carbon dioxide. And if you'll notice over here on the other side, here for cellular respiration, here's our carbon dioxide. And then you have next to that, on photosynthesis side, here's our H2O. This is our water. On the opposite side over here for cellular respiration, here's water. Then we have our glucose, C6H12O6. Here's our glucose, or our simple sugar. Over here on cellular respiration, here's our glucose as well. And then last but not least, here we have on both sides, photosynthesis and cellular respiration, here's our oxygen. So all of the components for both of these chemical reactions are the same. All the ingredients, if you will, are the same. However, the processes are reversed. Okay, so we focus primarily here on photosynthesis first. We're going to notice that we're taking our carbon dioxide molecules, combining that with water, as well as, if I can open my expo, energy from the sun. So right here, I'm going to put sun because that's the energy that I'm going to be using for this chemical reaction. You'll notice that I have something on cellular respiration side that was not accounted for over here on photosynthesis. And this is the trade-off. This is the difference between the two. We need energy from the sun for photosynthesis to take carbon dioxide and water and use that to convert it into glucose and oxygen. Okay. Now, when you look at photosynthesis, obviously it's specific to plant cells. And the reason it's specific to plant cells is these are autotrophs. They produce their own food. And this process will take place in the organelle known as the chloroplast. Only plant cells have chloroplast. Animal cells do not. So photosynthesis is exclusive to plants, or exclusive only to organisms that are autotrophic, that can produce their own energy, their own food source, if you will. So specific to plant cells, that's our focus. Takes place in the chloroplast, and its main purpose is to create glucose. Here we have glucose. Oxygen is just a nice little byproduct, if you will, of photosynthesis, which is very beneficial to us, but also to plants as well. And we'll get to that here in just a second. Okay, so here's our 6CO2 plus 6H2O, which is going to yield our C6H12O6 plus our 6O2. Those sixes are there to make sure that our equation is balanced. And that's something that we didn't cover this year, but we need to make sure our equations are balanced for law of conservation of matter and law of conservation of energy, right? So we're using our carbon dioxide and our water to create glucose and oxygen. What are we going to do with this now that it's made? Well, plants and animal cells will undergo cellular respiration. So plants are creating their own food, which means they have to have a way of using it for energy as well. So they create their food, now they're going to use it. Animal cells, like our cells, we cannot do this process of photosynthesis. So we have to consume food. We have to eat things to get the glucose that our body needs. If you recall from our biomolecules review, glucose is that simple sugar that allows us to have that day-to-day energy that we need for all of our functions. For everything that keeps us alive, we need energy, and we're going to get that from glucose. The bonds that hold it together are holding the energy that we are going to release into the body so that our cells can do the job they need to do. So we take in our glucose, we breathe in our oxygen. All right, plant cells are doing this as well, except they've already made the glucose. They don't need to consume it, right? We breathe in our oxygen. Within our cells, specifically the mitochondria, that's the organelle that is going to do cellular respiration. The mitochondria is then going to break the bonds that hold glucose together and use them to create carbon dioxide and water. These are waste products for us. We will breathe out carbon dioxide and we will breathe out water vapor as well. We'll use some of this in the production of ATP. And ATP is the energy source or the currency of cells. This is what cells will use to run all the processes that they need to run. This reaction within the mitochondria will produce approximately 39 ATP molecules. And that is the main purpose of cellular respiration, is to produce ATP, or to produce the energy that cells will use to carry out their functions. And as I pointed out, these are essentially the same processes, just reversed. So here we have carbon dioxide and water being used to create glucose and oxygen. Here we have glucose and oxygen being used to create carbon dioxide and water, but more importantly, create ATP, which is the energy we're releasing. Where did that energy come from? It came from the sun, right? The sun was used as the energy source to create these molecules. That energy is then stored in the bonds that hold those molecules together. When we eat food, right, or when plants take their glucose and transport it to the mitochondria, we breathe in oxygen, we now have the components necessary to break the bonds that hold them together, and breaking those bonds and using some of these elements as well allows us to release the energy in the form of ATP molecules. Those ATP molecules are going to be the currency or the energy that all of your organelles in your cells and each of your cells are going to use to carry out all of their functions, whether they're synthesizing proteins or just running the normal day-to-day activities that are required to keep you alive. All right, so quick recap. Photosynthesis is specific to plant cells, takes place in the chloroplast. Its main purpose is the production or the creation of glucose. Obviously, it's using carbon dioxide, water, and the sun to do this. For cellular respiration, this is for all plant and animal cells. Don't forget, plants do this too, right? The organelle involved is the mitochondria. Its main purpose is the production of ATP, which is the energy currency that cells are going to use to carry out their functions. And as I mentioned for, I think, the third or maybe fourth time, these two equations are essentially the same thing, just reversed. All right, I think that about covers it. Now, obviously, if you look at test questions involving photosynthesis and cellular respiration, they may include diagrams that are incorporating the mitochondria and the chloroplast, and you may see these molecules moving in and out of either one of the components that make up the chloroplast or the mitochondria. But keep this in mind, if we're trying to simplify this, we're looking at moving a couple of things around, carbon dioxide and water, breaking them apart and recombining them into the formation of glucose as well as oxygen. And then we're doing just the opposite in the mitochondria. Plant cells will take it from the chloroplast and move it to the mitochondria. They don't need to eat food. We, however, like many other organisms who cannot undergo photosynthesis, will have to consume food to get those molecules so that we can create the ATP that our cells need to live. And that about wraps that up. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video.